Assalamu alaikum.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
And assalamu alaikum to our viewers to our new series on the last 10 surahs of the Quran. Today we're going to be exploring Surah Al-Fil, and I'm excited to kind of explore this with you. We'll be going through some of the tafsir, some of the linguistic features. We'll be talking about how we can apply the verses to our everyday lives, and today is the first episode of Surah Al-Fil. So I'm excited to share this with you, the audience, and assalamu alaikum to you all. We have with us Imam Adam again. The CEO of Quranic and head Imam in, I think, Seattle, in his mosque. And he'll be helping us, guiding us on this journey. And all of this will be available on YouTube afterwards if you wanted to watch it from beginning to end throughout our whole series. But today is episode 1 with Surah Al-Fil. And
Excellent. Jazakallah khair. So let's go ahead and begin the recitation, inshallah.
Bismillah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بأصحاب الفيل ألم يجعل كيدهم في تضليل. Have you not seen, O Prophet, how your Lord dealt with the army of the elephant? Did he not frustrate their scheme?
And we can jump into the tafsir of that as well now. Let me just jump into it. So the tafsir here says, and I'm getting the tafsir from the Study Quran, which is available in English. Though elephants appear here in the singular, some say that the Abraha had 8 or 12 elephants with his army. According to the earliest histories, when commanded to approach Mecca, the elephant knelt and would not be moved. Despite being beaten by the army, when turned in any other direction, it would rise and walk. But when turned toward Mecca, it would again kneel and refuse to move. The linguistic structure of the verse indicates that the story was well known to the Arabs. They are thus being asked how it is that, knowing the story of how God protected the Kaaba, they do not derive the proper lessons from it and believe in God. That God made Abraha's scheming go astray alludes to the manner in which God allowed them to plan the entire expedition and carry it out to their own demise. Since, from a Quranic perspective, God is the best of plotters, and the scheming of the believers is naught but astray. And that's the commentary there.
Yeah. So I'd like to go back a second to
Sure.
the actual introduction of the surah. So if you could read the introduction to the surah as well in tafsir.
Oh, of course, yeah. Sorry, in the tafsir. Yeah, I thought we should go over that because I think there's a bit of context missing as well. Not in that part. So Al-Fil, just to introduce the story, is an early Meccan surah believed to have been revealed after Surah 109 and Kafirun. It takes its title from the discussion of the masters of the elephant, whose destruction it relates. It is said that Abraha, an Abyssinian general who ruled Yemen, had built a church in Sana'a in order to divert pilgrims from the Kaaba in Mecca, but when the pilgrims did not abandon their worship of the Kaaba at the Kaaba, Abraha sent an army against Mecca in the year 570. So the same year in which the Prophet Muhammad is believed to have been born. According to some, a few members of the Quraysh had either defiled or burned down Abraha's church, along with the largest army that had ever been assembled in Arabia. Abraha sent an elephant, which he intended to use to pull down the Kaaba. God, however, protected the Quraysh and the Kaaba by sending against them a swarm of birds that pelted them with stones. Many interpret surahs 105 and 106 together as a warning to the Quraysh that they were not protected because of their status, as they were given to believe, but because God wished to protect the Kaaba and to make way for the coming of his final messenger. It is said that the Prophet Muhammad invoked the memory of this event during his conquest of Mecca, saying, "Verily, God restrained the elephant from Mecca and has given his messenger and the believers authority over it, and he has returned its sanctity to it today, just as its sanctity was yesterday. So let those who are present inform those who are absent. And that's the introductions for Surah Al-Fil.
Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah.
So I think one of the important things that I was reflecting upon
Yeah.
is that the Quraysh thought that because of their protection, they thought that the reversal of this elephant or the reversal of this army was
Mm.
actually a good omen for them, and it was a sign that they were already on the right path. So why did they need to be corrected or guided further?
Yeah.
Which is an interesting commentary and an interesting reflection that are there times when things happen to us that we feel we are on the right side and that we no longer need guidance? Or
Mm.
do we feel like we are already so comfortable and so blessed that we don't actually, that we must be doing things correctly?
Mm.
And this is what happens when you attribute too much your blessings to your own deeds. When in
Yeah.
fact, your blessings are a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your blessings could be, if you are a blessed person, Allah has given you much more than many others, which is very
Mm.
likely if you're watching this that you have much more than many others in this world.
Mm.
Um, and that is a test for you. That will you be grateful? Um, but if you turn it into a way in which you say, well, I don't need any more guidance, I don't need any more correction, I am beyond correction, I am righteous, this is when you get into a dangerous part because now you have turned something noble, which
Mm.
is attributing good to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and having good intentions of Allah, you've taken it to its extreme where you attribute it to yourself and you say, I must be righteous and I must be this way and I am
Mm.
beyond fault as a result. And this is what the Quraysh they
Okay.
believed. They believed that because they were helped with their trade and because they were helped with the army of the elephant, that they would be they would be saved and that they would be protected and that they were guided.
Mm. It reminds me of I think we reflect on this when we look at some other verses of the Quran, that there's just because one is given wealth and one is not given wealth, that does not indicate any sort of righteousness, any sort of morality. It's something that's often used as a test more than like something to hold over others. And this seems to just be, I imagine, from the perspective of the leaders of people in Mecca at the time, this was some sort of economic warfare. We want the economy to go into through Mecca rather than this other place, and God wants us to be rich. But this is a correction coming down again. God doesn't want you to be rich. It's not because of your wealth. It's because of the sanctity of the Kaaba. Aside from the wealth that you might get from that. I think it's always important to remember that that there are, like you mentioned, a lot of us might be in privileged positions, not just because we're better than anybody else, smarter than anybody else. It's always an important thing to reflect upon. Jazakallah khair.
Yeah, and there's many people who attribute this even to people that are very wealthy. They will say,
Mm.
well, if they are very wealthy, then God chose them to be very wealthy, so God must love them somehow.
Mm.
And this is a flawed thing. This is what the Pharaoh you would use. That look how powerful I am. I must be God. He took it to its utmost extreme. But there are many people who believe themselves to be gods on earth because of their massive amounts of power and massive amounts of wealth.
Mm.
And we should not let them feel that way. We should not give that to them. We should not give them that kind of power, because at the
Mm.
end of the day, إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. The most noble of you is the one who is most mindful of Allah, not the
Mm.
one who is the most blessed. Because all of these blessings will be a test. All of these blessings will slow us down on the day of judgment, because those who are poorest, they will enter Jannah first. Not that being poor is righteous, but they will have much less to account for. They will have much less to account for. And
Mm.
those that are more wealthy, they will have much more to account for. So they will enter Jannah last in comparison to the poor.
Jazakallah khair. How much do you see this? Just a question to you in your communities in the masjid. Do you see any? Oh, this person's really wealthy in business. Let's go to okay. There's like going to someone for business advice, but then it's just like all advice. You get these kind of figures. You see them all over social media, anyways. Like some wealthy person, he's just giving advice on every single possible subject. Not just wealth at this point. It's not even business. It's just everything.
Yeah.
Like where you wake up at this time, eat this, don't eat this. This is halal. This is haram. Basically, do we have is this an issue you find in the community? I haven't seen too much of it, although my community is not that big, so I can't speak to so much.
Yeah, I think when some people see a successful person, they want to emulate that person so that they can also hope to achieve success. And from that view, it's all right. But then also assuming that this person will have some religious ability or some blessing, some connection with Allah that no one else has. This is, this is suspect,
Yeah,
because even you had many situations that I saw personally where someone was claiming to be very wealthy, and
yeah,
people would ask them all kinds of religious questions, and the person would talk about how many religious things he does, how many times he goes for Umrah and Hajj, and blah 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 blah, and then come to find out he's not even 1% of how wealthy that he claimed that he was, and that he
yeah,
was simply a scam artist. Subhanallah. So we've seen this happen.
yeah,
But I think more importantly, I think that's a niche thing. But really, the most important thing is in our own families, in our own interpersonal relationships, that we have to realize that no one is above flaw, no one is above mistakes.
mm,
It takes two to tango, as they say, right? You have to have two people in order to have any conflict. So if there is conflict in your family, you must ask yourself, you must not say to yourself that I did not do anything wrong. There's no
mm,
way I did anything wrong. There's no way I am in the wrong side of this. But you have
yeah,
to ask yourself, well, actually, maybe there is something that I did wrong. Maybe there is something that I could have done better. Um, you should not automatically believe that God must be on your side, because you could be like the Quraysh.
yeah,
You should significantly doubt your own interpretation of your own goodness,
yeah,
because only Allah knows how good you are, and only Allah will reveal to you the reality of how good you are. And
mm,
hopefully, what you perceive yourself as is as close as possible to what Allah will show you on the Day of Judgment. Um, of course,
mm,
you can never be 100%, but as close as possible, you want it to be matching
yeah,
um, your perception of yourself and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows you to be.
yeah.
And we ask
I
Allah for this.
100%. Yeah, I find in those situations just better to, even if you know you're right, just stand down. Doesn't really win, especially in family relations. That's all. I think that's been my personal experience. But yeah, it
Yeah.
reminds me of the way we've been talking about how people might respect those with wealth. Has been some people who I've met. When we talk about this a lot, you do networking because this person who might have, not just resource assets, like money, wealth, property, whatever. They might have both. They might know somebody which can do this, or might know somebody which can do this for me. And I think maybe we should maybe reframe that sometimes. And this is more a message to myself than anybody else in particular. Um, Seek people that oh, this person has a really good relationship with Allah. Maybe I can ask him to make dua for me, and I'll get because he has a better relationship than I do. Maybe that'll be better to be answered. I think I find a lot of the time you're always on the lookout. Oh, who knows somebody I can get something out of? Like, oh, who knows so and so. I don't know. They can get me a good deal on this, or they can get me into this job. I feel like we should be more seeking people that have, again, speaking about myself here, that have relationship with Allah, which we can kind of leverage and maybe take something from that, and see how they build that relationship, and maybe even ask them to carry maybe one of those requests rather than just seeking people which can give us material gain. Um, that's one thing I kind of got from this verse a little bit.
Jazakallah khair. Yeah, this is what the Prophet ﷺ, he told us as well. He told us to seek righteous company. He said that al-mar'u ala dini khalilihi, that a person is on the religion of their closest companion.
Mm.
So, who is your closest companion? On what basis do you choose your closest companion? Do you choose someone who is the wealthiest, or do you choose someone who is has the most connection to Allah? You can look for both, right? You can
Yeah,
look for both, but one has to be prioritized for the other.
yeah. Awesome. Should we jump into the next surah or two? Next
Mhm.
ayah, I meant, sorry. Let me jump into here. I think we did these two together, didn't we?
Yeah, so I think I'll just read the whole story. This is so short, so
Cool.
I'll just read the rest of it.
Sounds good.
وأرسل عليهم طيرا أبابيل ترميهم بحجارة من سجيل فجعلهم كعصف مأكول. All right.
Okay.
So did he not frustrate their scheme, and he sent against them flocks of birds that pelted them with stones of baked clay, leaving them like chewed up straw?
Awesome. Should we go, I think, line by line and we can kind of drop any comments as in this? So I'll stop between the tafsir of the verses. So I'll start with, I
Yeah,
think
so
it
just
does
read from verse 3.
three and four is together again. So, and send against them birds and swarms, pelting them with stones of baked clay. So swarms here translates ababil. I think where's the Arabic word for that? Let me find it. Ababil, I think here.
Ababil.
Ababil,
Ababil.
flocks, which is interpreted to mean in groups, in successive groups, many, or coming upon them from every direction. According to most authorities, God sent birds from the sea, such as swallows and herons, each carrying three stones the size of chickpeas or lentils, one in each claw and one in the beak. Every soldier that was hit by one was destroyed, though not all met his fate. They did not die instantly. Some are said to have lingered for many days as they tried to make their way back to Yemen. According to some, Sijil here translated stone. Sijil here translated stones of baked clay is a contraction of two Persian words, sang, sanj in Arabic, meaning stones, and jil, meaning clay. Interesting. We can explore that some more. Um,
Yeah, you can go ahead and finish it up. Just read the
finish?
last
Yeah,
piece as
sure.
well. It's just
Cool.
short. Yeah.
Oh, there's one
Very
more as
short.
well. Okay. I didn't see that that was all that was left. I have a very short last piece. And finally, such that he made them like devoured husks. That's what the study caught on here, leaving them like chewed up straw. Devoured husk renders esfin, might tell me if I'm saying that right, makul, which indicates the remains of leaves eaten by animals. The whole of the surah thus likens what was the greatest army known in the recent history of Arabia to be one of the most insignificant things known to the Arabs.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. And then also knowing that this was the year that the Prophet ﷺ was born,
Yeah.
and it was a miraculous event that
Mm.
coincided with the year of his birth, and it was something which all of the people of Mecca had to have seen in their generation.
Yeah.
It was like a pivotal moment, not in their self history, in their history of themselves, in their understanding of themselves, um, which did make them feel like they were righteous, and that look what Allah has given them in terms of protection.
Mm.
But what they misinterpreted was that Allah was not just protecting them, but Allah was protecting His house,
Mm.
and it was more about the house than it was about them, and that they were just the caretakers of that house. Um, And even though the house was filled with idols, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had a plan for this house. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had a plan for the Kaaba.
Mm.
And what was Abraha's purpose? Abraha wanted to tear down the Kaaba because he had built his own church in Yemen.
Mm.
and he wanted the people to come to his church in Yemen so that more trade could come to Yemen, as opposed to people coming for worship in the Kaaba or at the
Mm.
Kaaba. And so that was one of his things, was I want to destroy the Kaaba and make my own temple, my own church for people to come to. And then they witnessed as this army gathered against them with mighty elephants. And then they
Mm.
witnessed as elephants turned around, and they witnessed as swarms of birds came and destroyed these soldiers, the majority of this army. And the ones that were left were simply trying to run away from what was happening.
Mm.
And so just imagine what that would have done to their own, how they spoke about themselves and how they thought of
Mm.
themselves, how they saw themselves in the eyes of Allah. And then so this surah is a huge reminder for them that this pivotal event in their lives, in the lives of their fathers, the lives of their grandfathers, was actually not what they thought it was. It was not a signal that they were the best or that they were the most beloved by Allah, but actually it was a sign of the messenger. It was a sign of Allah protecting his house and Allah
Mm.
having a plan for his
Jazakallah khair. 100%. As in, it definitely is. It might probably brings a lot of hubris to maybe think that, oh, this, look at this huge miracle, it's all because we're of this land. I think, could you reflect a little bit on, is there what we know of? I've been trawling through my histories of the prophets. I've got a book in English I've got recently, which I've been trying to get through,
house.
which is really good. It's good fun. It's good. It's a really good read. It's one of my favorite books, actually. But could you kind of, from your side, what is some of the pre the coming of the prophet? What is some of the history of the Kaaba and Mecca in particular, that particular area throughout the history of other prophets as well? I know there is some.
Yeah, we have, it was built by Ibrahim and Ismail.
Yep.
That is the kind of main narration we have, and that is in the Quran as well. وإذ
Mm.
يرفع إبراهيم القواعد من البيت وإسماعيل
Mm.
ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم. That Ibrahim and Ismail, they built the Kaaba, they built the first house. أول بيت وضع للناس أول بيت وضع للناس, the first house which was established for the people to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was
Mm.
Ibrahim and Ismail. They built the Kaaba. And so when they built it, they made the special dua. They said, "Rabbana taqabbal minna, O Allah, accept from us what we've done. You are you are the all-seeing and the all-hearing,
Mm.
and forgive us for our shortcomings. You are the one who accepts repentance." And that's a beautiful dua because it's really balanced.
Mm.
Because on the one hand, you ask Allah for acceptance, and on the other hand, you ask Allah for forgiveness.
Yeah.
You did something good, so why should you be asking for forgiveness? Because you're not so proud of your effort that you forget that you could have done something wrong, that you could
Mm.
have made a mistake, that you could have, in the process, hurt someone unknowingly or knowingly. And so you do something good. Was there a trade off that you don't even know about? Was there something that happened that you didn't even realize? So you ask Allah for acceptance and you ask Allah for forgiveness anytime you do anything good and you build anything. And that is such a beautiful thing in Islam, which Islam teaches us, be confident. Like Yusuf, when he went to the granaries and he said, "Place me in charge of the granaries, in charge of the treasury." Be
Mm.
confident, but don't be so confident that it becomes arrogance. And be humble to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, humble to those around you, but not so much that you turn it into disgrace. You know,
Mm.
be independent, be independent and take care of yourself and be self-sustainable, self-sufficient, but don't become thinking that you're so independent that you have done everything yourself and you owe nothing to no one and you don't owe anything, especially to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah always keeps us in a balance. Ibrahim and Ismail, they built the Kaaba, they built the
Mm.
house of Allah. right? The most important masjid, you prayed there, your prayer is worth many, 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 many thousands, right?
Mm,
Your prayer is worth like an infinite amount, basically. If you pray there five, 6 times a day, if you pray there five times a day, you pray there for even 1 week, you're there. You know, you pray those salahs, how much reward you get, subhanallah.
subhanallah.
And that was built, but they did this amazing thing, probably one of the single most important deeds that was ever done, right?
Mm,
And they still asked for forgiveness, and they still asked Allah to accept it. They didn't
mm,
say, well, we did this for Allah. You know, we benefited Allah. No, you didn't benefit
yeah.
Allah. Even if you build the Kaaba, you still did not benefit Allah. You only
Mm,
benefited yourself. And you did not benefit yourself unless you ask Allah for acceptance. And so they built the Kaaba. And then the Kaaba, being a physical building, it did need rebuilding.
yeah.
So there were throughout its history restructures and rebuilds. One of them was in the life of one of them was before the Prophet ﷺ's time. One of them was in the life of the Prophet ﷺ,
Mm,
where the famous story where they rebuilt the Kaaba, and this was before he was a prophet, and then
mm,
they were fighting over who gets to place the black stone. They said the next man to enter, because they were superstitious people, especially the Ashab al Fil incident, or the people of the
yeah.
Fil incident. They just felt like they believed in good omens, and you know they would
Mm,
do things like this, like they would leave things to chance. Part
yeah.
of their culture. They said a first person to enter the haram will be the one who decides, and it was Prophet ﷺ. And they all were
Yeah.
at ease because they knew his character and they knew what kind of person he was. So they brought him forward. They asked him, as the famous story goes, what to do, and so he got a cloth, and he had all of them. He placed the stone on the cloth. They brought the stone to its location, and then he himself picked it up and placed it. So he received that honor by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that his
Mm,
blessed hands were the ones who placed the stone in its position where it is today as well. But yes, it was rebuilt, even in recent times after flooding and after so on. It
mm,
needed to be restructured, to be, refreshed. The cloth, they refresh it every year.
yeah.
But
I've
yeah,
seen
so
a bit of
that
stuff here in the UK actually. I saw in Cambridge, got a beautiful mosque in Cambridge, Cambridge Central Mosque, and they have at the back um, quite a decent sized chunk, very big, um, of the part of the cloth. It was quite nice to see. I haven't
mashallah.
actually. I think
Yeah,
most I've seen of the Kaaba actually is in
subhanallah.
anyway. Subhanallah.
May Allah invite us to his house, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Um, Another thing that's mentioned is about the Zamzam, right? When Ismail and his mother were there, and Ismail, from his feet, the well of Zamzam sprang, and
Mm,
then it was actually Banu Hashim, and specifically the grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ, who was, made in charge of the well of Zamzam,
yeah.
because he saw it in a dream, and then he rediscovered it and dug it up, and
Mm,
that was from acts of the Abdul Muttalib, right? The grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ, who uncovered the well of Zamzam and was able to bring that back as a part of the culture, and
mm,
also he was actually a critical core figure in the Ashabul Fil incident. He
mm,
was a critical figure in the Ashabul Fil incident, because he was in the negotiations with Abraha.
mm,
And once he realized that he cannot stop Abraha, he just simply took refuge with the other families, evacuated, and Allah. Then they asked him, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Allah is the one who will protect His house." So he was a man of faith,
mm,
you know, and he said, "Allah is the one who will protect His house." And so these are some of the things what we know about the history of the Kaaba and the history of the people of the elephant.
mm. What you said about just earlier, I think you mentioned something about the way that people would because of events like these, and even after the Prophet, people had It was the culture back then. You said when they were, oh, we'll see who walks through the door, and that'll be who places the stone. And I've heard something interesting recently, and that kind of puts a different, position to this. Is actually the human brain is naturally religious and looks for these kind of, looks beyond the material. And
Mm.
this was put forward by Abdul Hakim Murad, I was watching, also from Cambridge Central Mosque, coming up a lot today. And he called it he put it interestingly. I'm only quoting him here. That this you could put atheism forward as a sort of mental illness because of the fact that humanity, whether you believe in that religion or not, throughout all of its history has been religious. We look at the story here. It's even what economies turned around. It was whether you were someone that was deeply devoted or not to one or many gods was a different story. But it
Mm.
was something that humanity was centered around. You wasn't, oh, we've just built the like, it's not like, oh, it's like Dubai, we just built the Burj Khalifa. They're building it. The thing that brings the people was religion, because that was what people's lives were orientated around. And the form of that differed over history, but it's actually a relatively recent phenomena that it was, we say, no, there's nothing beyond what we see materially. It's what you see, and anything beyond that doesn't exist. And this is a sort of something that the human brain hasn't actually had to deal with for very long. And he was having a discussion about how this sort of illness of whether you want to, atheism and pure materialism being a recent thing is causing a sort of biopause, he termed it. That it's first had an impact on our environment, as we've become a religious, that we have become like a pathogen upon the surface of the earth. That's biopause part one. Biopause part two is now it's impacting human population. Human population is declining fertility and XYZ and mental health crises. Of other parts, it's actually not very long that we've had to deal with such a lack of any theism. It's very recent that humanity's had to deal with that. And this kind of reminds me of that, is people would had these, and not only did they have these miracles, we have miracles around us all the time. Just go to any sort of nature hotspot and you'll see some, but people don't necessarily reflect on that. It's not something that we're tuned, we're naturally tuned to do so, but it's something that this latest generation of humanity hasn't been trained to do. So it's interesting to see that 1400 years since the prophet, I would argue maybe the last 100 years, when a religiosity has become one of the most prevalent forces. So it seems to be an acceleration.
Yeah, subhanAllah, it's in our fitra, right? Like you said, it's in our
Mm,
nature.
mm,
Children, they ask why. Keep
yeah,
asking why? Because they know that there is a cause to everything. They know there
yeah,
is a reason to everything. And the ultimate reason is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is the original cause.
mm,
I would also like to read here the narration about what happened when Abraha came to Mecca.
yeah,
Here it says that so as Abraha arrived and into Mecca after a long journey with his
yeah,
army, and he said, so he as he got out, um, they arrived at a place called Al Maghmas near Mecca. They settled there. This was the pasture where the camels of the Quraysh they grazed.
yeah,
Abraha sent his troops to capture the camels and other animals of the people of Mecca. They also drove away 200 camels of Abdul Muttalib, the grandfather of Prophet Muhammad SAW,
mm,
and the leader of the Quraysh. Abraha sent an emissary to enter Mecca called Hanata and to bring him the leader of Quraysh. And he told him to convey to Quraysh that the king did not come, Abraha did not come to fight with the Meccans unless they stood in his way of destroying the Haram.
mm,
Arriving in the city of Hanata was directed to Abdul Muttalib. And according to Ibn Ishaq, Abdul Muttalib replied, Wallahi, we too have no desire to fight him, nor do we have the might to do so. This is the sacred haram of Allah, built by his friend, Prophet Ibrahim. If he
mm,
wills to prevent Abraha from pulling it down, he will protect it. And if he allows him to approach it, by Allah, we have no means to defend it. So Hanata told him, come with me to Abraha. So Abdul Muttalib went with him. When Abraha saw him, he was very impressed by Abdul Muttalib because he was handsome, he was charming, and had a great personality.
mm,
He descended from his throne and sat with Abdul Muttalib on the ground. He said to his interpreter to ask him, what do you need? And Abdul Muttalib replied to the interpreter, I want the king to give back my 200 camels, which his soldiers have taken. So he was not even concerned about the Kaaba in terms of his question, but he was concerned about his camels.
mm,
Abraha said, when I first set my eyes on you, I admired you greatly and had great respect for you. But
yeah.
now all of that is lost. You speak only of your 200 camels, while you know that I have come to tear your Kaaba down, which is the
Mm,
embodiment of your religion and the religion of your forefathers. You did not even say a single word to persuade me to spare the Kaaba.
mm,
Abdul Muttalib said very famously, I am the owner of the camels and am concerned about them. I
yeah.
am not the owner of Allah's house. The master of the house knows best how to protect his house.
Mm, subhanallah.
So this was something which stumped Abraha and he became angry.
Yeah.
Um, but this is what happened, and then of course what happened as the Quran mentions. But the main thing that the Quran mentions is not the full story, but the story of how Allah protected them, and how what the explanation of what exactly had happened, because they didn't know. They just saw birds come, they saw some stones fall, but they
Mm,
didn't realize what had happened or what it was or what the reality of it was. And this was the first an explanation of what had happened to them. And so that's it for me today. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to learn the Quran and to act upon the Quran. Ameen.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much. No, I appreciate that a lot. I can imagine I can imagine the scene of Abraha's frustration or just when you said that. Um, is oh, I bought all these. I think elephants at the time. We can't imagine it now. I think equivalent of an aircraft carrier or something. So when you bring your elephants, it means you mean business. It's your showcase of strength and power. It's like, oh, I brought all these elephants out, and you're not even gonna confront me, and you're just worried about the camels. Um, so yeah, it's again probably that arrogance again. It's like, look, you should recognize how powerful I am. Well, where's your reaction? But yeah, Jazakallah khair. I think that wraps up exploration of Surat Al-Fil for today. Next Monday, we'll be going into the next chapter, which will be, if I just double check, our next chapter is Quraysh, Surat Al-Quraysh, which is 4 verses. So next week, we'll be doing that at 6 p.m. GMT. No, 6 p.m. British Summer Time, 5 p.m. GMT on Monday, inshallah. We've just got a few things to share with you in the meanwhile. So if I just show you this, I'll show you this first. So we've been so those of you which have been with us for a few weeks now would have heard of this, but I'd love to share this with you all. We have our new Learn the Arabic Alphabet book. It's actually a way to understand the phonetics of the Arabic language rather than just the letters themselves. And it draws a lot of parallels from the English language into the Arabic language, so it's quite good for those going from English to Arabic, whether you're someone that's reverted to Islam, learning Arabic, someone that's learning Arabic who's second generation like myself. So you were not taught Arabic from in education. Now learning it again. It's great for those kind of situations, especially when you've got that English background. There's the link for that in YouTube right now. You can click on that. It's on Amazon and available for $15.99 US. And you can scan the QR code there as well if you'd like to take a look. And one other thing I'd like to mention to you all is that's the book, is our Quran clips feature, which is currently in beta. So Quran clips is a new way to experience the Quran. It's a way to record yourself reciting the Quran, see other people reciting the Quran, other people like yourself, which can help to inspire you along that journey of learning how to read the Quran in a beautiful way. A lot of people talk to me about how, reciting the Quran, learning to read the Quran and the correct tajweed and the correct pronunciation is a long journey. It's something to commit to and something that might help ease that journey, inshallah, seeing other people like yourself do that. And this is a free feature that's going to be coming to the Quranic app. You can actually join the beta. You scan the QR code and you'll be able to join that, inshallah, and help us to test that, roll out that feature to the rest of our user base. It is currently only available on iOS, so be sure to check it out, inshallah, and you will get something special from us as well for doing so. Free Quranic pro code for a month, inshallah. I think this next one is, no, that's no longer relevant. Okay. So I think that wraps up everything. I thank everyone who's joined us today, inshallah, and see you next week. If for those that do feel free to give us any feedback as well. When you sign up on Luma, you should be able to get a feedback with some smiley faces or sad faces, and you can let us know anything, inshallah. And I thank you all very much for joining us.